Welcome to Athar's Garage. In this video, I'll be working on the XRAY XB2C step 4 or bag 4 for the front assembly. Let's get started. So it looks like there are some really small parts in this bag, so be careful opening it up. I'm going to go ahead and dump the parts in my paper plate that I have here. Make sure no small parts are left in the bag. There's some really small shims that you don't want to go missing. This is something I do like. They have the screws packaged separately within the bag, so it kind of protects the finishes. So it looks like the first thing we're going to do is install the side rails. It's going to go like that, and we're going to need 6 M3 by 8 countersunk screws. So check your manual, make sure you got the right screws, and we're going to need 6 of them. We can flip it over and we can see the holes that we're going to be installing it in. It's going to be these 3 here, and additionally these 3 on this side. And remember, you're going into plastic, so you don't need to crank down on it too hard. Once it's snug, it's good. We'll do the other side now. Now we can install this piece here that has the kick up in the front. So it's going to install in the channels of the side rails, and we're going to need these carbon pieces as well. And the orientation is the 2 large holes here and here are going to be facing the front, like so. And then these particular pieces here are going to be facing, or are going to install in those larger holes with these bosses fitting down into there, like so. And we'll need a few different screws. Let's start with the M3 by 8 button head screws. And the button head screws look like this. So these install from the top. You're going to need 6 of them, 3 for each side. So these will install here, here, and here. Okay. So installing these first will help keep everything lined up on top, and it'll make it easier to install from the bottom. But I'm not tightening everything down. I'm just starting it, just in case we need some adjustment or movement. There's enough play so we can install the other screws. And this is a good example of why you don't tighten it down. As you can see, these holes here aren't quite lining up. So if I push it over, they'll line up. But if you tighten it down all the way, you may not be able to make those small adjustments as needed. So I just got those started. Next, we're gonna need 2 M3 by 10 millimeter countersunk screws. And those are gonna install here and here. And I'm just gonna get those started as well. Next, we're going to install 3 M3 by 8 countersunk screws here, here, and here. And again, I'm just gonna start these screws. And then lastly, for this particular step, we're gonna need 4 M3 by 18 countersunk screws, and they're gonna install here and here. And these will actually install into these pieces here. Do this side. Now we can go and tighten everything down. And you're going into plastic, so you don't need to crank down on it too hard. Once it's shouldered up, it's good. Now that this is complete, we can set this aside and we can assemble the bell cranks. So I'm actually surprised at how big these pieces are for the bell crank. Usually every RC car, especially even on 8-scale cars, the bell cranks aren't even this big on some of the ones I've seen. So this is pretty impressive. I'm sure it's going to add a lot of strength and rigidity to the steering system and make it a really nice steering feel for the car. So for this, we're going to need 4 3x6 by 2.5 bearings, which I believe are going to be these. We're also going to need 2 M3 by 12 millimeter button head screws, along with the 4 aluminum shims and this piece for the bell crank. Alright, so we're going to install these metal shielded bearings on the top side. The top side meaning you have 2 holes or 3 holes. On the bottom you only have 2. And then you're going to install one of the aluminum shims and then another bearing. You're going to do the same thing on the other piece. One of the aluminum shims and then the bearing. Next, you're going to insert the screw from the bottom. You're going to put one of the shims on the screw and then install this piece like so, and the screw's going to go in to these holes here. I'm just going to get that started and then do the same thing on this side. Screw from the bottom, aluminum washer shim, an aluminum shim, and then so what's nice is X-Ray actually tells you how to tighten it here. Basically have it shouldered up and then take it back a third of a turn. I see a lot of people when they tighten these down, they tighten it down and the bell cranks don't move freely. So having that in the instructions to basically say, hey, tighten it down and back it off a third turn makes it easy for most people. So you can see this is tight and it doesn't move at all. And you want it to move freely so your servo doesn't get overworked. So I back it off, and as you can see, it can move smoothly and freely under its own weight. So that's what you want. Next, what we can do is install the 4 bearings that have blue rubber seals in them. So install 2 on the top side and 2 on the bottom side. Next, we're going to install these aluminum pieces from the bottom. Note the orientation. The larger diameter that has 2 flats is going to be facing the bottom, and just the round diameter is going to go through the bearings, like so. And we're going to need 2 M3 by 6 millimeter screws to go into this piece here. And since it's going into aluminum, I will add a small dab of Loctite. Even though it doesn't say to do so in the manual, I'm always afraid of something backing out. And I'm only adding a little bit and then wiping some of it off with the paper towel. And go ahead and tighten it by hand. Make sure it moves freely in the bearings, and then you can do the next one. You don't need to tighten down on it too much. That thread locker or Loctite will help keep it in place. So now we can install the bulkhead. Let's trim this real quick. There's a certain orientation for the bulkhead. You want this surface will be facing down. It's got countersunk holes for screws. So this will be facing down, and facing this side will be facing towards the front of the vehicle. So it's going to go like so. And additionally, if you look at these holes, these are kind of oval and have flats on the sides here and here. And those flats are going to coincide with the flats on these pieces here on the bell crank. So that being said, you can see that the flats install only in one way. Like that, it'll only install in one way. And then on the bottom, make sure the countersunk holes are facing forward. And then use the last 2 M3 by 8 millimeter screws to install onto that aluminum piece, and just add a little bit of Loctite so it doesn't back out. Tighten it down evenly so you don't cause any binding. And you don't need to tighten down too hard. Once it's snug, it should be good to go. And finally, just make sure everything moves freely like this. I'm just moving it side to side and it moves freely, so that's good to go. So that's it for step 4 or bag 4 in the manual. Thank you for watching. Please let me know down in the comments if you have any suggestions or tips on this part. If you like this video and found it helpful, please like and subscribe. And stay tuned for the next video where I do step 5 or back 5, which is the front suspension. I'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks.